I walked into the office that morning feeling light, almost nervous. My hands trembled slightly as I clutched the small envelope with my doctor's note inside. I thought about the look on my mom's face when I told her. "They'll be happy for you," she said. "They'll see how hard you've worked." "I'll be happy for you," she said. "They'll see how hard you've worked." I should have known better. I cleared my throat. "I have some news," I said, my voice unsteady. My boss, Mr. Allen, looked up from his desk. His smile was polite, warm even, but it froze in a second. I didn't see it coming. "News?" His tone was clipped, wary. "Yes," I said, forcing a breath. "I'm pregnant." A pause too long. You could feel the air thicken. The receptionist stifled a cough. The team shifted in their seats like they were afraid to breathe. Then it happened. The whispering started. Quiet at first, almost polite, but it carried venom. I thought he'd smile. I thought he'd say congrats. Instead, he said, "Congratulations, I guess." His eyes didn't meet mine. He was scanning my file on his screen, avoiding me, avoiding me. My chest tightened. I forced a laugh. "Thank you?" HR jumped in like they were rehearsing. We should probably discuss your workload adjustments," one of them said. Their voice was shaky. I noticed the corner of my boss's mouth twitch. Anger? Disgust? I couldn't tell. "What kind of adjustments?" I asked, my pulse spiking. "Well, maybe we can, reassign some of your responsibilities," HR stammered. "Lighten the load. You know, maternity considerations." I blinked. My mind scrambled. Reassign, lighten the load. They weren't congratulating me. They were punishing me. "Reassign," I said, my voice sharper now. "Like, demotion?" He finally looked at me. His eyes were cold. "We have to think about productivity," he said. "You wants to be able to, perform at the same level. It's only fair." I laughed. A short, bitter sound. "Fair? You think this is fair?" My hands shook, but I tried to steady them on the desk. "I've been here 7 years. I've led every project you threw at me. And now? This." HR shuffled papers nervously. "We were just following protocol," they mumbled. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab the nearest chair and throw it. Instead, I felt the betrayal sink into my bones. The room felt smaller. The walls closed in. My trusted mentor, my boss, was choosing policy over humanity, choosing their convenience over my life. "Policy," I repeated, my voice breaking. "So your convenience comes before my rights? Before my baby?" He looked away. Silence. I felt the team's eyes on me. Pity, judgment, embarrassment. I swallowed hard. I wanted to tell them I wasn't weak. I wanted to tell them they didn't know me at all, but the words got stuck. My throat tightened. I left the envelope on his desk. "I'll think about it," he said. That was it. That was the congratulations. That was the acknowledgement. I turned and walked out. Every step echoed in my head like thunder. My vision blurred, not with tears yet, just the raw shock of betrayal. How could someone I trusted treat me like this? How could they reduce me, erase my value for wanting a child? Outside, the air hit me, cold and sharp. I leaned against the wall, my legs trembling. My hand rested on my stomach instinctively, like I was shielding both of us. I felt small, humiliated, furious. But I also felt awake. The first punch had landed, but I didn't fall. Not yet, not here. I walked home that day with my mind spinning, replaying every word, every glance, every whisper, and somewhere deep inside, a quiet ember started to glow. They hadn't seen the last of me. I closed the door behind me and let it slam. The sound felt like a punctuation mark on my humiliation. I leaned against it, pressing my forehead to the wood. My chest was tight. My hands shook. My mind replayed every word from that office. Productivity, reassignment, protocol. The insults were disguised as policies, but they burned hotter than any open attack. My mother was sitting in the living room, knitting needles paused midair. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at me, eyes wet. "You said you're okay, right?" she asked softly. I laughed bitterly. "Okay?" I whispered. "Do I look okay?" She stood and wrapped me in her arms. "You are stronger than they know." I pulled away. "Stronger?" I snapped, suddenly angry at the comfort. They took everything from me. My job, my respect, my future. and you sept her telling me I sept strong. You are strong, she insisted, voice trembling. You sept survived worse. You sept survived this too. I sank onto the couch, my hands covering my face. I don't spit feel strong, I admitted, voice muffled. I feel small and angry and scared. That sips when my phone buzzed. A message from Sarah, my friend. Hey, don't set let them get to you. You still bounce back. Coffee later? I stared at it, bitterness curling in my stomach. Bounce back? I muttered. Do they even know what they did? I didn't reply. I couldn't. Empty platitudes made my teeth ache. I buried my face in my hands. My baby kicked once, lightly, a tiny reminder that I wasn't alone. That small life depended on me. My fear doubled. What kind of world was I bringing them into, if people like my boss existed? I pulled out my journal. The leather cover was worn but familiar. I opened it and started writing, not thinking, just letting the words pour. They humiliated me. They laughed in subtle ways. They acted like I was invisible, like I didn't exist. I am more than this. I am more than their rules, their politics, their judgment. The pen scratched against the paper as I traced every insult, every whisper, every dismissive look. Each word made the anger pulse stronger. I realized something I was not ready to forgive. Not today, not ever. Mom, I said suddenly, voice low. I don't think I can forgive them. She sat beside me, hand on mine. You don't have to, not yet. I nodded slowly. My chest tightened again. I could feel the seed of something dark, something simmering in the pit of my stomach. Revenge. The word tasted like iron on my tongue. It whispered promises I wasn't such ready to voice aloud. One day, I remembered my boss's eyes avoiding mine, his smug little smile, the way HR stumbled over words as if they were protecting him, not me. Every slight, every microaggression, stacked like bricks in my chest. I wrote it all down. Names, dates, words, gestures. Every humiliation became evidence. A map, a blueprint. Sarah called. I let it ring. My mother glanced at me. You need people, she said softly. I need a plan, I said. My voice was quiet, but there was steel in it. I need control. I need proof that they can touch me again. She didn't argue. She just nodded like she understood. The storm inside me wasn't quiet anymore. It raged. I could feel it shaping me, carving me into someone else. Someone who wouldn't be small. Someone who wouldn't be humiliated. Someone who would wait. And then act. I closed the journal and sat back, letting the tension flood out in a long, shaky breath. Fear, sorrow, numbness. They were all still there, but so was the ember, the whisper, revenge. And I promised myself, I would listen. I walked back into the office like I belonged, though I knew everyone could see me differently now. Lowered responsibilities. Fewer meetings. Side projects. My desk felt smaller, my voice quieter, but I was watching, observing, learning. He was there, my ex-boss, swaggering through the room like he owned it. The way he leaned over Karen Sip's desk, pointing at her report with that smug grin, made my blood boil. No, you don't get it. We need precision, perfection, like I said. Karen flinched, biting back a retort. I caught her glance, eyes pleading. I nodded slightly, not sympathy, connection, understanding. We shared the same silent fire. Later I found Tom in the cafeteria, nursing a coffee like it was armor. You okay? I asked. He shrugged, gaze fixed on the table. Does anyone survive him? I leaned closer. I've got ideas. We can survive. Better than survive. We can flip the game. He looked at me, suspicion tangled with curiosity. Flip the game. Exactly that, I said, voice low. But quietly, carefully. Watch, wait, learn. He has weaknesses. Everyone does. We started small, conversations at lunch. Sharing experiences, cataloging his little abuses. Did you see how he took credit for Maria's report? I whispered one day. Tom nodded. Classic Alan, always credit himself. Always belittle. I wrote it down in my mind. Every meeting, every email, every careless word he let slip became a data point. His arrogance was predictable. His vanity was exploitable. And his greed. Oh, that was the easiest part. Back at my desk, I opened my laptop and stared at the screen. Company structure. workflow, budget allocations, emails. I traced every decision he'd ever made that revealed overconfidence, every corner where he cut costs to make himself shine. Small fires were burning now, silently in my mind. I could feel them feeding me. Why are you looking at him like that? Sarah's voice startled me. She leaned over my cubicle, her curiosity loud and unguarded. I didn't flinch, thinking. Thinking what? About how fragile he really is, I said, voice calm but the heat inside me was rising. How much control he really has, and how easy it will be to take it away. She raised an eyebrow. You such serious? I smiled, just slightly. Deadly serious. Every interaction became research. Every laugh at his jokes, every smirk at his own brilliance, I catalogued. I watched his moods shift. I saw who he feared, who he manipulated. I noted everything. You're obsessed, Sarah said one day, a little worried. Not obsessed, I corrected her quietly. Aware, patient, focused. The storm inside me was no longer just rage. It had sharpened into strategy. I felt my hands steady, my breath controlled. I could wait, I could plan, I could build power in silence. During meetings, I started speaking less, listening more, watching each suggestion he rejected. Every idea he ignored, I stored. He thought I was sidelined, invisible, beneath him, perfect. But I wasn't invisible, not at all. I was gathering, weaving, preparing. One afternoon, I cornered Tom and whispered, remember that budget cut he announced last quarter? The one he said would motivate efficiency stip. He nodded, unsure. Check the numbers. Follow the paper trail. You still see cracks, tiny ones, but they sup there. His eyes widened. You still going to use that? Eventually, I said. My voice was low, almost gentle, but it carried the weight of promise. Everything he sep's proud of, I set'll turn it into leverage. Slowly, quietly, perfectly. I could feel the power shift starting in my veins. My anger had transformed into something cold, calculated. Every day, I built more alliances, mapped weaknesses, rehearsed conversations in my head. I learned who feared him, who secretly hated him, who wanted justice but didn't dare speak. By the end of the week, I was no longer just a sidelined employee. I was a strategist, a watcher, a silent fire burning beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment. He didn't know it yet, and that was perfect. One day, very soon, the balance would shift, and I would be ready. The first night alone in my tiny apartment, I sat on the floor with my laptop balanced on my knees. My baby slept beside me, chest rising and falling like a fragile heartbeat. I couldn't let falter. I looked at her and whispered, we are going to be okay, more than okay, we be unstoppable. I opened an email from a networking group I joined weeks ago, a workshop, a mentor. People who believed in growth, in ideas, in potential. I clicked RSVP, hands trembling, not from fear, but from anticipation. Mom, I muttered quietly, this is it. This is where we start. Days blurred into nights. I juggled feeding schedules, diapers, and Skype calls with potential collaborators. Every interruption tested my patience, but I thrived on it. Each challenge sharpened me. My mind, once clouded with betrayal, was clearing. I was building something real, something mine. Then I met her. Dr. Elena Moore, mentor, visionary. She didn't just nod politely when I spoke. She leaned in, eyes lit with curiosity. Tell me your idea, she said. I swallowed. I want to start a consultancy, digital marketing, local SEO, guest posting, small businesses, independent creators, people who are overlooked by big firms, people like me. She smiled, sharp and knowing. I like it. It steps ambitious. Smart, you have the drive. But ambition alone won't protect you. Strategy will. I nodded, hanging on every word. I have plans. Plans are good, execution is better, she said. Do you have a timeline? I laughed softly. Not yet, but I will. Step by step, brick by brick. Every meeting with her became a lesson, a chance to refine my vision. I watched her move confidently, make decisions with poise I craved. I took notes obsessively, translating her strategies into my reality. I asked questions I didn't know the answers to. She answered them all. Meanwhile, life at home demanded creativity too. My baby's cries were sudden, sharp, a reminder that every choice had consequences. Late nights became our bonding hours. I hummed lullabies while working through spreadsheets. I whispered affirmations to her, to myself. We are building something unstoppable. Nothing can touch us. Emails went out. Calls were scheduled. Partnerships formed. My little venture began to take shape. And all the while, my ex-boss remained unaware, smug in his ignorance. He probably imagined I was struggling, barely keeping my head above water. One evening, I looked at the small stack of completed contracts, proof of my tiny victories. "See, baby," I said, cradling her against my chest. "We start doing this, they start see soon enough." I was strategic now, every choice had dual purposes. Survival, growth, and one day, revenge. My mentor's guidance wasn't just for business, it was shaping my mind for the long game. I learned to read people, to spot weaknesses, to leverage opportunities. I visualized the future like a chessboard, pieces in motion, every move calculated. I smiled quietly as I wrote in my journal that night, not just about wins but about ideas for what was coming. Every alliance I formed, every connection, every small success, it wasn't just for me, it was for the day I would tip the scales. The thrill of independence surged through me. The power of creating something from nothing made me feel alive in ways I hadn't since before the betrayal. I was no longer defined by someone else's opinion. My boss's dismissal had become fuel, not a cage. And I relished it. I tucked my baby in, whispered, "One day they shall see us, all of us." And I believed it. Not hope, belief. I closed my laptop. Another day done, another brick laid. I was building a fortress, piece by piece, around my life and my baby's future. A fortress no one could breach. Not him, not HR, not the whispers of doubt I once carried. I was ready, patient, growing, watching, waiting. And I knew, one day that quiet, unstoppable force would turn toward him. I almost didn't notice him at first. Not immediately. The man walked into my office for a consultation. Sharp suit, confident stride, and that familiar aura of self-importance. But it wasn't him. Not yet. He introduced himself. "Hi. I settle Mark. I settle be assisting with your project rollout." Something in his posture caught me off guard. Then it clicked. The way he tapped his pen, the slight twitch of his jaw. Mark, the former right hand of Alan. My ex-boss. I smiled politely. "Of course. Glad to have you on board." He nodded, unaware of my recognition. "Thank you. Looking forward to collaborating." I let the moment linger in my mind like a slow-burning flame. He didn't know who I was. Didn't recognize the woman he had once humiliated, sidelined, dismissed. I felt a thrill so cold it made my hands tingle. As the days went by, I orchestrated our meetings carefully. Calls, emails, conference rooms where he was the client. I was the authority. He leaned on Mark for every decision, every clarification, and I watched. Every hesitation, every question directed at me. The predator had become dependent on me. "You think this budget allocation will work?" he asked Mark one afternoon. Mark glanced at me, subtle acknowledgement. "I think we should run it past her first." I leaned back in my chair, casually checking my notes. "Agreed. I still review it, but I see potential improvements." His gaze shifted to me, a flicker of surprise, almost irritation, before he masked it with a polite nod. "Of course. Please proceed." I felt it in my chest, a slow, satisfying surge. He didn't realize the irony. He was seeking guidance from the very person he had once crushed. Later, Mark pulled me aside. "You've grown. I mean, your company. Impressive." "Thank you," I said softly, letting my eyes linger on him. "It's steps taken time, patience, learning from mistakes." He nodded, not realizing the double meaning. He didn't know which mistakes I was referencing. Not yet. During presentations, I allowed small victories to pile up, adjustments here, strategic recommendations there. Every nod of approval from him fed the quiet fire inside me. I kept my tone neutral, professional, my words measured, but the subtle psychological dominance was there, calculated, deliberate. "Do you really think this will work?" he asked during a call. "I do," I replied calmly. "And ISEP already run the numbers. The strategy is sound." He leaned back, hands clasped, exhaling sharply. "I trust your judgment." I didn't correct him. I let him bask in the trust he was forced to give me. The irony tasted sweet. The balance of power was shifting, almost imperceptibly. He thought he was the client, the one in charge, but I was orchestrating every step. Every interaction became a chess move. Each email carefully worded, each meeting subtly directed. I was patient, silent, watching how his ego responded, how his reliance on me deepened. I cataloged every flaw, every subtle desperation. Mark was invaluable. I leaned on him strategically, planting seeds about efficiency, workflow improvements, highlighting Alan's oversights without directly confronting him. By the end of the week, Alan was completely dependent on my guidance, and still unaware who I really was. One evening, after a particularly tense video call, I sat in my office, leaning back, watching the city lights flicker outside. I whispered to myself, they shalt see one day, they shalt remember me, and then they shalt realize exactly who holds the power now. I replayed every memory of humiliation, every dismissal, every belittling comment Alan had made, and now he was at my mercy, unknowingly playing a role in my ascent. I drafted another email to Mark, careful, precise, designed to guide Alan toward decisions that benefited my company, my growth, my plan. Every word was a brick in the structure I was building. Every subtle nudge was a reminder of the control I now wielded. I smiled quietly. The irony wasn't lost on me. The predator was no longer untouchable. He was entwined in my web, entirely unaware. Every call, every meeting, every presentation brought me closer to the moment when poetic justice would unfold. I leaned back, fingers steepled. The tension in the room was electric, though only I felt it fully. Patience, strategy, observation, all moving toward a single truth. The balance of power was no longer his, and soon, very soon, he would realize it. I watched him pace outside my office like a caged animal. The familiar arrogance I once loathed was cracking, just slightly under the weight of his dependence. Alan needed this contract. Desperately, and I held the keys. Let's review the terms, I said, voice calm, measured as I tapped the printed proposal on my desk. He looked at me, almost sheepish. Yes, sure. I leaned back, arms crossed, letting the silence stretch. He shifted uneasily. I thought we sept agreed last week on. No, I interrupted softly. We have instead agreed. Not yet. I have a few adjustments, just minor tweaks. His jaw tightened. Adjustments? Yes, I said, letting my tone remain neutral. But inside, a quiet thrill surged. Each word, each pause, a calculated move. The deadlines, payment schedules, deliverables, everything needs clarity. I set sure you understand that, right? He nodded quickly, swallowing. Of course, of course. I smiled faintly, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. Good, because until these are finalized, nothing moves forward, and I shall need your full cooperation. Cooperation, he repeated, almost like tasting the word, realizing it was now demanded of him. I watched him carefully. The panic was subtle at first, a twitch in his eye, a slight edge to his voice, but it was there. I didn't need him to stumble dramatically. I didn't need him to beg. I just needed him to know that for the first time, the power wasn't his. Can we go through the clauses together? He asked. Voice lower, cautious. Of course, I replied, gesturing to the chair opposite me. Let's make sure we stir both aligned. As we went through each section, I allowed small victories to accumulate quietly. A suggested revision adopted at my discretion. An ignored comment I knew would frustrate him. Every minor decision he deferred to me fed a subtle, intoxicating satisfaction. The predator, the one who had dismissed me, undermined me and humiliated me, was now vulnerable. You've changed your approach since last time, he remarked cautiously, glancing at the document again. I tilted my head, letting my gaze linger. I sept grown, learned a few things. You sept be wise to follow my lead. He flinched slightly, but nodded. Yes, of course. The thrill wasn't in gloating. I kept my face neutral, calm, professional. The power wasn't about making him squirm openly. It was in the subtle, invisible dominance. In the knowledge that every step he took now required my approval. Every email, every suggestion, every decision passed through me. Deadline flexibility is negotiable, I said, scanning the contract, but only if milestones are met. Otherwise, standard penalties apply. His hand tightened on his pen. Understood. I leaned forward, voice softer, almost conspiratorial. Alan, I trust you, Sal's honor these terms. After all, we both want this project to succeed. He swallowed again, nodding, but the panic in his eyes was unmistakable now. For the first time, I could see that he realized exactly who held the cards. Do you need any clarification? I asked innocently. No, he said quickly. Everything seems clear. Very clear. I let the silence stretch, watching him squirm under my calm scrutiny. The thrill surged again. Not cruel, not petty, but precise. Every acknowledgement he gave, every deferment, every hesitation, it was proof. Proof that the scales had tipped. Later I read through the emails he'd sent to Mark, copying me on everything he once would have handled alone. He was learning, slowly, the new hierarchy. Each word he typed, each question he asked, every approval he now sought from me, fed a quiet satisfaction I didn't need to voice. I made notes in my journal that night, every reaction catalogued, every flicker of hesitation, panic, and respect documented. I didn't gloat in the office. Not yet, but here, in the quiet of my space, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of my triumph. The predator was finally exposed. I thought back to the days he had dismissed me, minimized me, made me feel invisible, and now those same tactics had become irrelevant. He needed me, depended on me, and I would decide how far, how fast, and when. I closed my eyes for a moment, savoring it. Power wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. It was subtle, insidious, and complete. I was finally the one calling the shots. The exhale I let out was quiet but filled with satisfaction. And I knew this was only the beginning. It started small, just a whisper here, a document there, names I'd kept close, details I'd recorded meticulously over the years, now found their way into the right inboxes. I didn't need to exaggerate. I didn't need to lie. The truth was explosive enough. Are you serious? A voice hissed over the phone. One of his former team members, someone I knew had admired him blindly. Deadly serious, I said. Calm, measured, letting the weight of the words hang. Check your files. Check the emails. Everything is as it happened. There was silence on the line, then a whisper of disbelief. I can stet believe this. He never what? I asked softly, leaning back in my chair. My baby slept quietly nearby. He didn't set betray you. He didn't set manipulate, belittle, take credit for your work. It seps all there. Every word, every action. You step'll see for yourself. A pause. Then the anger began to surface. How could he? All this time, all the trust. I allowed myself a small smile. Not out loud, not openly, but inside the satisfaction was sharp and cold. Karma didn't need a push. I only had to shine a light where it belonged. I watched as the office began to fracture. Emails leaked, carefully, anonymously. The once untouchable Alan became a subject of hushed conversations, incredulous glances, and sudden nervous avoidance. Did you see what came out today? One of his old colleagues muttered in the break room. I can stet believe he acted like nothing ever happened. Another nodded. All those manipulations, the backstabbing, it steps true. I remember now. I just didn't stet want to believe it. I leaned back at my desk, hands folded, heart calm. The predator was finally exposed. Not by rumor, not by hearsay, by fact. Every betrayal he'd orchestrated, every humiliation he'd engineered against me and others, now reflected back like a mirror. Later he called Mark, my strategic ally, and his former confidant, voice tight and clipped. Have you seen this? What is going on? Mark Sepp's tone was careful, neutral, yet unmistakably satisfied. I suggest you read carefully. You sup find the details are accurate, no exaggeration. I don't understand, Alan stammered. Perhaps it's time to reflect, Mark said softly. On your past decisions, on how you treated people, on what you ignored. I overheard snippets through the forwarded messages Mark shared with me. Panic, confusion, desperation masked as dignity. It was poetic, watching him fumble through the consequences he'd long ignored. I didn't gloat in person. Not yet. I let the work speak for itself. I observed from a distance as former colleagues confronted him directly. You lied about the budget? You took credit for our proposals? One woman demanded, voice shaking but strong. I? He faltered. You think we wouldn't notice? That we wouldn't remember? Another said, anger laced with disbelief. I could feel it in my chest. A quiet, deep satisfaction. He had orchestrated cruelty, belittlement, and betrayal for years, and now the truth existed independently of me. The mirror reflected his misdeeds, and he was powerless to hide behind it. Emails, messages, and whispered confirmations spread like wildfire. His carefully curated image, polished and untouchable for so long, began to crumble. You've ruined everything, he whispered into the phone one night, likely to someone desperate enough to take his call. I let the silence speak for me. Ruined. No, revealed, exposed. What he had built on fear, manipulation, and deceit was now being dismantled by the very people he had hurt, and I had merely opened the doors for them to see. My journal filled with notes, small reflections, mental checklists, every interaction, every moment of disbelief from his former allies, every subtle tremor in his voice, it all became a testament to justice. I paused, looking at my sleeping baby, and whispered, "See? This is how the world should work. Truth finds its way." The thrill wasn't in revenge as a spectacle. It was in clarity, in balance restored. I had orchestrated nothing maliciously. I simply ensured that his own actions were visible to those they impacted. Every betrayal, every injustice, every dismissal, now public knowledge. And in that, I found peace. I didn't need him to collapse completely, just to see, to know that the power he wielded through fear was gone, that the people he underestimated, including me, now stood firm and aware. The final confirmation came when a group of his former colleagues reached out to me. "Thank you," they said, quietly, carefully, "for letting us see the truth." I nodded, almost to myself. No, thank him for it, he made it easy. In that moment, I understood the poetry of it all. Justice isn't loud, it doesn't need dramatics. It's quiet, inevitable, and profound. And now Alan was facing the consequences of a lifetime of arrogance, mirrored back to him through the very people he thought he controlled. I leaned back in my chair and allowed myself a small, private smile. The masks had fallen, the predator was exposed, and the world finally saw what I had endured. I saw him before he saw me. The office conference room smelled faintly of coffee and polished wood. Sunlight fell across the table, highlighting the lines in his face, lines I had never noticed before, aging, uneasy, human. He looked up, startled. You start here?" "I am," I said, voice calm, steady, not a tremor, not a hiss of anger, just me, sitting across from the man who had tried to break me. He shifted in his chair. "I didn't expect. You didn't expect me to be standing here after everything you did," I interrupted softly. "I didn't either, but here we are." Silence stretched. I let him fidget, let him taste a fraction of the uncertainty I had endured for years. I, he stammered, then stopped. Pride still tangled with fear. "I want to recount something," I said, voice steady, almost intimate. "Every sleepless night I spent doubting myself. Every humiliation you orchestrated, every promotion you blocked, every whispered insult, every sideways glance meant to make me small. Do you remember?" He flinched. "I don't. Don't lie to me," I said, leaning forward slightly. I remembered it all, every slight, every betrayal, and I turned it into fuel. He swallowed hard. I haven't sorry. Sorry doesn't erase it," I said softly, letting my words land. "But I see you, I see the cracks. I see your fear, and I don't need vengeance like I once imagined. I don't need you to kneel, I just needed for the scales to shift. I never thought you survive? Thrive? Outgrow you?" I finished for him, voice gentle but sharp. "I did. I had no choice but to. And now, here we are. The power you clung to, the arrogance you wielded, it's gone. All that remains is truth." He exhaled, a low, shaky sound, eyes downcast. "I didn't realize." "You didn't realize because you never looked beyond yourself," I said. "You never considered how your actions reverberated, how many lives you touched with cruelty, how you made people small so you could feel big. And now," I paused, letting the weight settle. "Now the world sees it too. He blinked, jaw tight, hands clenching. I know regret, I whispered. I see it in you, but I don't need to own it. I only needed to survive it. And I did. More than that, I built a life. A life where my choices matter, where my daughter knows I am strong. And you are no longer the measure of me. He tried to speak, but words failed him. His pride, his carefully curated armor, shattered quietly in the face of calm truth. No theatrics, no shouting, just acknowledgement of what had been and what could never be undone. I never thought, he finally said, voice low. I never thought you set. Rise? I supplied gently. Yes, I did, and I had to. He looked up then, eyes wet, fragile. I am sorry, for everything. I hear you, I said, but I didn't soften beyond recognition. I couldn't, because this wasn't about mercy. It was about understanding, closure, and reclaiming my life. I thought back to nights of tears, journal entries, moments of doubt. Every struggle had carved me into someone no one, not even him, could control anymore. Do you understand now? I asked. He nodded slowly. Yes, I see what I did. I see how I hurt you, and others. Good, I said, voice firm, but quiet. Because seeing is the first step, but its steps not about forgiveness. Its steps about acknowledging reality, about knowing the balance has shifted. He swallowed, tight-lipped. I wish I could change it, but you can I said softly. And that step's okay. You are human, flawed, and now exposed. And I am free, free of your judgment, free of your control. I leaned back, letting the room breathe around us. The sun glinted off the table, catching his face in fragments, vulnerable, regretful, human. And in that quiet, devastating balance, I felt both sorrow and satisfaction. He was broken by truth, not malice. I had survived him, outgrown him, and reclaimed my power. I didn't need a spectacle to prove it. He would carry the memory of my ascent with him forever. I hope you find your way, I said finally. Just, not in my path again. He nodded, voice barely a whisper. I understand. I stood, slowly, exhaling. My daughter's future, my life, my dignity, they were intact, and he had finally met the consequences of his own making. No shouting, no drama, just calm, just clarity, just the quiet, devastating truth. And I walked out of that room, stronger than I had ever been. The office hummed with life, laughter, ideas, small victories bouncing off the walls. I walked through it all, and realized I had built this. Every email, every decision, every sleepless night had led me here. Morning, boss, one of my team called cheerfully. I smiled. Genuinely this time. Morning, let's make today count. It was a simple phrase, but heavy with meaning. I had the power now, not just over contracts or clients, but over my life. Even Alan, my former tormentor, sat quietly at a desk a few rooms over, employed under me, now bound by the rules he once dictated. I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need theatrics. The irony wasn't in my words, it was in the balance. Later my mentor dropped by my office, leaning against the doorframe. You did it, really did it. I chuckled softly. We did it. You taught me to see the possibilities, to take the punches and build bridges anyway. You also taught yourself, they corrected. Eyes sharp. No one handed you this. You clawed it night after night while most would have given up. I nodded, thinking of every lonely night with my baby asleep in the next room, every tear shed over humiliation, every plan scribbled into journals no one would ever see. It was instead easy, I admitted. Not a single step was. You made it look effortless, they said with a faint smile. But I know better. The door clicked behind me as a new team member arrived. Ready for the meeting, boss. I turned, smiling. Always. Let's show them what we got. And then I paused, hand resting on my desk, thinking of my daughter. My heart ached in that sweet, sharp way. Only a mother knows. She had given me purpose when the world had tried to strip it away. Every setback, every betrayal, every sleepless night, it had been worth it for this life I had carved out for us. That night, I sat by the window, baby in my arms. She yawned, tiny fingers curling around mine. Outside, the city glittered, alive and relentless, and inside, I felt whole. "You're going to change the world, you know," I whispered, voice soft, almost reverent. She blinked at me with those wide, curious eyes, and I laughed quietly. "And I shall be right here, watching, guiding, not controlling, just being." I reflected on Alan. I had built the empire he could never imagine. And now he was part of it, quietly, silently acknowledging his place in the new order. Not through fear or humiliation, but through recognition. He had underestimated me once. Never again. I thought about the mentor who had guided me, who had seen my potential when I could only see rubble and ash. "Thank you," I murmured aloud. "For believing, for showing me the path when I couldn't see it." They simply nodded, knowing their part in my journey was complete, but essential. I thought about my scars. Every betrayal, every heartbreak, every sleepless night, they were etched into me, not like wounds to hide, but like proof that I survived, proof that I endured, proof that I had risen from the ashes stronger than before. "You've come so far," my mentor said softly, almost a statement to the universe rather than me. "Yes," I replied, "farther than I ever imagined. And yet, this feels like the beginning." Because it was the beginning of a life that was fully mine. My choices, my rules, my triumphs. Not by chance, not by handouts, not by revenge alone, but by resilience, creativity, and relentless determination. I rocked my daughter gently, feeling the weight of her small body against mine, and the lightness of finally being free of the emotional chains Alan had tried to place around me. "This is for us," I whispered. "For every tear, every setback, every moment you weren't set there to see me through. This is our world." The city lights outside blurred into golden streams as I let her drift to sleep. My office, my empire, my life. It was all real, all tangible, and all ours. I thought about the future, about the potential, about the quiet, powerful satisfaction of knowing I had transformed injustice into empowerment. Alan's presence wasn't a shadow anymore. It was a reminder that I had survived, that I had thrived, and that the scales had finally balanced. I breathed in deeply, feeling the weight of every challenge lifted, every victory earned, every betrayal turned into fuel. And in that quiet, tender moment, with my daughter asleep in my arms, the city alive below, and my team thriving around me, I understood fully what it meant to rise, not through fury or malice, but through survival, resilience, and the unshakable knowledge that I could and did overcome. I whispered one last thing to the night. "We rise always." And for the first time in years, I felt the thrill of peace and triumph entwined. My scars were visible, but they were proof of life, proof of love, and proof that even from betrayal and heartbreak, a new chapter, bright, fierce, and unstoppable, could begin.